Good Monday morning to you. I am Dan Kopp coming to you live from Madison, Wisconsin. And joining me, like always, is Ty Fershing. Good morning, Ty.
Good morning, Dan. I'm so excited to be here. As usual, I'm coming from Entebbe, Uganda. And to support your topic today, I actually dug into my clothes that I brought to Africa with me. And as you can see, we're going to be a buffalo today, although I know yours isn't the Colorado buffaloes. But anyway, I'm in the spirit, buddy.
Hey, right on. I appreciate that. And had I been thinking it through, I would have worn my Colorado Buffalo shirt today as well. And I guess there's an opportunity lost on my end. See, I don't think things through. There's an example of Ty's much more cerebral than I. He thinks things through. I just put on a shirt that, whatever, I put on a shirt today, and it's sort of the company colors. That's all I thought about. Whatever. All right. So before we jump into today's topic, I want to remind you that you can contact Ty or me using our emails at the bottom of the screen, dan@leadingbuffalo.com, ty@tradesecrets.com. You can also DM us directly on LinkedIn. If you love our content, feel free to follow it. And on LinkedIn, across from our full profile pictures, you can ring the little bell icon and follow our content. Also, I welcome you to jump on YouTube to our Enhanced Leadership channel, and you can see all of our today's content and previous content on there as well. So today's topic, be the buffalo. I love this topic. It's sort of what I've been known for the last 15 or 20 years as a leader. And I'm going to explain what being the buffalo is. It's important for leaders and human beings to be the buffalo. So let me just jump right in and describe what it is. So back in 2007 or 8, I was reading an Oprah magazine of all things, the old O magazine. Probably still exists. Anyway, I wasn't reading it per se. I was glancing at it, and I saw a chart that said top 10 things I learned in life. And I read number 1, and that's the only thing I remember reading. And it was the chart was made by a lady by the name of Donna Brazile. She talked about a story she learned from Wilma Mankiller, who was the head of the Cherokee Nation at the time. And she said the Cherokee people basically rule their life based on how the buffalo acts. So on the Great Plains, if you've ever been in the Great Plains of the United States, you can pretty much see forever. And what happens when a storm's coming, you can see it coming. The females, the cows of the American bison, also known as buffalo, start running from it. So they're running the same direction as the storm, and it takes a while to get through it. The male, also known as the buffalo, typically charge through the storm, and they get through it faster. So the moral of the story is when there's something in front of you that needs to be confronted, you need to address it. I use the word confront. That's a poor choice of words, quite honestly. Addressed. When there's something in front of you that needs to be addressed, you need to address it, because it's not about confrontation. I was thinking about how I've been accused. You just like confrontation. No, I don't like confrontation. I actually hate it. I just like it behind me better than I like it in front of me. So that is, in essence, be the buffalo. I subscribe to it. I have my entire adult life. I've always done it that way. I just finally found a term for it back in 2008 or 9, whatever that was. So there are a couple caveats before you jump in and be the buffalo. You've got to have the requisite information. You can't just address an issue in front of you that needs to be addressed if you don't know what you're diving into. So you need to be able to speak intelligently and address things appropriately based on the requisite information. There might be a lot, it might be a little, I don't know. Every situation is different. Excuse me. Plus, you have to have your emotions in check. So let's assume you saw something that needed to be addressed, but your emotions were heightened because you witnessed something that was inappropriate or whatever. So don't delay addressing it, but make sure your emotions are in check if that is the case. So there's a huge, very high 30,000 foot level of viewing of what Be the Buffalo is. Ty, do you have any thoughts? What comes to mind when you think about being the buffalo?
Well, a lot comes to mind. I was just kind of thinking back at having all the information that comes from discernment, making the best possible decision given all the relevant information. Sometimes you don't have that, and I recall from your book where you had to disperse a large crowd via the perfect storm, right?
Right.
The actual perfect storm. was that Fort Devens? Is that right?
Yeah, it was the night of the perfect storm back in the 90s.
Yeah, and you had a bunch of people on the quad or at the parade grounds that have left their house at like 11 o'clock at night because of the storm, and they were getting worked up, right?
Yeah,
and it was close to 1,000 people, you estimated.
Yep.
And I know as a responder, you don't have all the information. At that point, you didn't. And so you had to lead by your gut, which goes back to one of your other tenets, like that. So we have discernment from the active personal engagement, and you had to employ those sensory tenets kind of, and make the best decision, because you didn't have all the information, but you knew if you didn't charge it, if you didn't be the buffalo, worse things could have happened. And so when you said that, it all came back from that chapter that you had written about. And I didn't know that the whole story behind the O thing. I knew you were waiting for Corey, your wife, and you picked up the magazine. I go, why is he picking up this magazine? And what is he reading? But you led into it more with the Cherokee Nation, right? Is that what it was? Right. And I didn't know that before. I don't think you put that in your book. So
I don't remember if it's in there or not. But that's when I first remember being the buffalo. And Ty and I were both military police officers back in the day, and I responded to basically an agitated crowd of about 1,000 soldiers, and it was the night of the perfect storm in Massachusetts back in the 90s. And I knew, based on the call, I was dispatched to go there to sort of calm down the crowd and disperse them and get them back to their barracks. Somebody was going to get hurt. And when I went into that area and there were 1,000 agitated soldiers around, just like a multitude of other times I responded as a military police officer, that someone that could have gotten hurt could have been me, theoretically. So it behooves a police officer to control a situation when he or she arrives on a scene. You've got to control it. And that just reinforced what I'd already been doing as a human being, where I've got a situation in front of me. I don't have all the requisite information. My emotions were definitely heightened, but I couldn't delay action because of what was in front of me. So I had to go address it. And within 5 minutes, I had calmed the main agitators down that were in the middle of this group, and they were starting to disperse. So by the time my backup, which was a canine handler, arrived, within, 5 or 10 minutes, I had most of the people headed back to their barracks already. So that's just one example that stood out in my mind when I was trying to come up with anecdotal things to put in my book of how I was the buffalo without having a word for it, basically. Right. And then as a leader, as a human being, you've got to address what needs to be addressed in front of you. Again, I used the word confront at the beginning in the introduction. It was a poor choice of words. It's more about addressing the things that need to be addressed. Because if you don't address something as a leader, other people will have seen what you're ignoring, and they're going to assume you condone it. So you maybe are condoning bad behavior. For example, it's as simple as you've got somebody who routinely comes late to work and you never address it. Well, why would everybody else come on time to work? If you don't mind if she comes late, why would he mind if I come late? So there's the essence of why, one of the main reasons that you need to address it. Because if you don't address it, you condone it, and it sure isn't going to go away. It's not going to fix itself. You can't close your eyes, hide in your office, shut the door, whatever, and assume a situation that should be addressed is going to go away and fix itself. It's not going to happen.
Right. And you had another example, because what I gave, the perfect storm, was an example. A decision had to be made then.
Right.
It's not like you could wait till morning, because that really was crisis management at that point.
Right.
Crisis management as a leader. But you had mentioned another story, and I'm trying to get it right. I think when you were an administrator, you saw another teacher having an issue, and you were kind of worked up, and so you went to sleep. Is that right? And before you addressed it.
So when I was when I was a senior executive, I had two of my executives who reported to me have a very public, very negative interaction. And it was in a rather large room, and 20, 30 other people saw what happened at the same time I saw it. And I was across the room, and it was over just as quickly as it started. But the damage had been done. They parted ways. It was over. It was about 8 o'clock at night. There was nothing of value that was going to be gained by me addressing that situation then. They were both heated. I was quite irritated at the behavior they displayed. I have a very good ability to control my emotions in a heated exchange. So I know I could have, but I took a step back, thought, all right, my emotions are heightened. Theirs are definitely heightened. It's over. I'm going to see them tomorrow morning early just because of the nature of where we worked. I was going to have contact with them. And all right, I'm going to sleep on this. So I slept on it, slept like a baby. I've used this before. Sleeping like a baby, I was up every hour crying. I didn't know what to do. I thought about it all night long. The next morning, I had an answer. Quite honestly, I don't know what the answer was. That's irrelevant. But I contacted both of them that following morning. Like I knew I would have contact with them. Say, hey, this is the deal. Here are my expectations. You guys need to fix this. Was in the essence of my discussion with each one of them individually. So that by that night, roughly 24 hours after the incident, both of them had called me on my cell and told me that they had discussed it. They realized they were wrong. They put it behind them and they were ready to move forward. So there's a prime example of how something needed to be addressed, but the timing wasn't right. And part of leadership is, when do you do it? When do you do the timing of leadership? And how do you do it and all those types of things? Well, the when, ideally, like, hey, you guys just did that. You're done, blah, blah, whatever. I could have addressed it right then, but I had to wait on it because I really didn't know what I was going to say, how I was going to address it. I figured it out by 8 the next morning. And it worked because they moved forward to the point where they became good, positive allies on the leadership team versus sort of combatants, if you will, that what I witnessed that one night. So even if you have the impetus to act, you might have to take a step back when you encounter something. Again, you don't know, maybe don't know enough to address it, or somebody's, to include your emotions, might be heightened.
Yeah, and that's a perfect example that you were employing emotional intelligence before it was mainstream.
Right.
Just because of the nature of the leadership style of not of Be the Buffalo. What you said, you have to have all the information, or you have to know if the timing is right, because timing is everything a lot of times in situations. Especially even in leading in general, timing is everything, right? But when you're dealing with interpersonal, whoo-hoo, you have a little bit more going on, because it can escalate something that didn't need to be escalated, and your method of waiting, it de-escalated it, and it was pretty much resolved almost immediately within the day.
Right. Ty, I'm gonna take a little segue here. Did you ever encounter the cartoon Phineas and Ferb?
Yes, I actually met him. I met the cartoonist himself. So.
All right, I was gonna say, because I thought they were fictional characters. Anyway, I see your point. So, but one of the things that Phineas said, Ferb, I know what we're gonna do today. Ty, I know what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about the leadership challenge, the who, what, when, where, and how of leadership. That'll be next week's topic, because we just talked about the when is huge, and it's not always obvious, if you will.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. Yeah.
And the how and the where, those aren't necessarily obvious either. Anyway, back to the topic at hand. You're right. It does depend on emotions, emotional intelligence, and timing. And there's no two situations that are the same. For those of you who aren't quite grasping this, and that happens, let me put it into a different perspective what Be the Buffalo is. Picture any conversation that you've had to have with a loved one, a coach, somebody who works for you, a colleague, a boss, a sibling, and it's something that you dread that, oh my gosh, I don't want to have that conversation. We've all been there. We're all human beings. We've all been there. 99% of the time, the stories we tell ourselves about what that interaction is going to be like is worse than the actual interaction. So why delay it? If you have your emotions in check, you know what you want to say, why wait until, oh God, it's Friday at noon and I'm gonna talk to her Monday morning? You're gonna worry about it all weekend. Why not talk to her Friday afternoon if you know you have to have a conversation with somebody that's less than ideal? Get it over with. Get it behind you. It's not because you embrace confrontation. You just get it behind you. Because if you've got, let's say Ty and I work together and I've got to hold him accountable for some boneheaded statement that he made. I know it's far-fetched, Ty. I can't ever see you making a boneheaded statement. But it's something as simple as a course correction versus putting something on paper. So just like, hey, Ty, this is what happened. And he would get the message, right? So if I'm going to do that, that's not a comfortable conversation. Ty and I have known each other for years. So why wait until Monday morning if it's Friday at noon? Why not just go have that? Because if it's uncomfortable now, it's going to be uncomfortable until Monday morning. And if I'm not the one who did something wrong and it was Ty, why not shift all that angst onto his shoulders where it belongs to reinforce the message I'm giving? Why do I own that angst over the weekend instead of giving it back to him? So just picture a critical conversation that you've dreaded having. You put it off. You finally have it, and the relief that washes over you. Yeah. Don't put it off. That's being the buffalo.
Yeah, I like that, because I've been in situations where the weekend has passed and the anxiety builds up on both. Yeah. Even though people don't think it does, it builds up on the leader and builds up on the person they're going to have to talk to.
Right.
Or if it comes between two people, it builds up on the one who initiated it, and it builds up on the one who has to wait until 48 hours until it happens.
Right.
There's a be the buffalo, and I love the way you frame it, because when you first tell the story, there's so many, there's a possibility for misunderstanding what it means, because you're trying to hit it head on and go. But with all the caveats in there, like it still has to be the time, but you have to address it as soon as possible. Really, right. That's what Be the Buffalo is, as long as you have everything else. There comes on opportunities where you have to do it immediately, i.e. the perfect storm story you told earlier and shared with us. To me, Be the Buffalo is not only practical, it's indispensable in leadership, because it is the full crisis management tool. Because if you employ everything we've talked about, if we employ your personal state, the timing has to be right, emotions have to be set, right?
Right.
If you employ that, if you employ what you value, and you're exemplifying that when you're doing it, and if you're employing your state, your personal state of mind, and how you're thinking, and all that wrapped into the discernment part, it's the infallible crisis management tool.
There you go.
Really. I mean, and I think every manager, okay, because we've talked about the difference between managing and being a leader, right? Managing is managing situations. Everybody that manages a situation should know about Be the Buffalo and have that as their toolkit, I guess, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, I love this tenet. It's one of my favorites to discuss.
Likewise, and also keep in mind, we've previously talked about a tenet of take care of your people. So when you have those critical conversations, getting back to my example of Ty, it's about holding Ty accountable and making him realize the error of his ways. At the same time, I take care of him. So I go in to address the situation, not destroy Ty as a human being. And that's huge, that it isn't about winning. It's not about kicking butt and taking names. It's about addressing an issue that needs to be addressed. At the same time, taking care of your person. Remember, my example was Ty just said something that shouldn't have been said. We can move past that as human beings, as colleagues, as an organization, provided I don't go in there to destroy and demoralize him. So I got to take care of him during that conversation. Excuse me. So finally, Be the Buffalo is obviously important to me. If you look right, it's always hard when I'm backwards in the camera. Anyway, right there on the back, in my wall behind me, is the name of my company, Leading Like a Buffalo. We have that in the name of our company because it's important. I've got it on my arm, Be the Buffalo, because I believe in it, and it's who I am, and it's what I am. I know we've talked about before, like I'm an open book to people, and if one of the things I talk about is, hey, if you've got a question, you hear that you hear a rumor, you hear my decision, you read my decision, you want to before you jump to conclusion and you've got concerns about what I did or said, ask me. I will tell you the reasons behind my actions or my words. You still may not like it, but you will understand what I'm thinking or was thinking when I said it or made a decision. And that's part of being the Buffalo too, because you've got to be there for your people. You've got to be authentic. You've got to have integrity, and you've got to encourage open discourse. And there's only one way to do that, and being the Buffalo leads into that, but it's a holistic again, I know Ty hates that word. It's a complete approach to leadership. Be the Buffalo is part of that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And especially on my final thought, I'm going to say it again because I like punching it till it's dead. You have to bring in that emotional intelligence component. You have to bring in that timeliness. You have to bring in your values, because when you do it that way, it's the ultimate tool. Okay. And it's something to start forging your leadership path, whatever leadership path you're on, from internal to external. It's that great avenue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I hope you've gained some knowledge from this week's discussion about being the Buffalo. We encourage all of you to do it, both in your leadership life and in your personal life, because it makes life so much easier when you address things in front of you that need to be addressed. So don't avoid, don't run away. It's not going to go away. You're going to feel that angst until you finally address it. Address the things that need to be addressed. It's as simple as that. Ty, any last words on being the Buffalo?
No, great discussion. Love it. Can't wait till next week. I like that topic.
Likewise. Tune in next week with Phineas and Ferb. We discuss the leadership challenge, the who, what, when, where, and how of leadership. So until next time, we're here talking leadership, and you can do it. Good luck.
Goodbye, everyone.